Okay, so where last we left it, let's take a look here. We have our target design right here. We were talking about the box model, we were talking about pseudo classes, and our test site is starting to have a quasi-functional navigation bar. Right now the navigation just points at random sites, and I only have one of them active, but it would be easy enough to copy that code over and make them all kind of look the same. So the next thing we have to do to start to adopt this look right here is to start to figure out how to lay out these blocky sort of areas. So let's start with this big one right here. And there's tools you can get, little extensions to download that will literally measure the number of pixels across that make up this image, but I'm just going to take a guess. I know that this one is 250 and this looks like it's about twice as big. So let's head back into Text Wrangler, and I'll make this div this size and then bring it closer to the left and have it jump further down. Okay, so Text Wrangler and Area 1. Let's say we want it maybe 250 pixels from the top, but only maybe 30 pixels from the left, and the width and the height should be 500 by 500. So I'll save that guy, bring him back up. Let's see, I want this page right here and refresh it. Okay, so that's on the right track. It looks like I maybe need to be 20 pixels from the left and a little bit higher, so that's easy enough. And after all, we're just kind of fudging it here. So let's make this maybe 200 pixels from the top, 20 pixels from the left, reload it. So that's starting to look like it's on the right track. Now similarly, if I wanted to have something like this, I could make another little div here that would just have the same background color as the full page, and then as I lay text in, it just won't have that really explicit edge, right? Let's say we wanted to do this register today thing over here. So for that I might say copy over this div and then call it register. So position absolute, top is going to be 0 pixels, and then instead of left I'll say right is 20 pixels. And this one's a lot smaller, so maybe it's 200 wide and 100 tall. And because I haven't called out to this one yet over here, I'm going to want to come in here and copy over one of my divs. Oops, I just cut it by accident. So I'll paste that guy in and say register. And now when I reload my demo example, I should have a little bar that's over here to the side. It's a little too small, but you get the idea. So if I do the math as I move along, I'll be able to start laying in all of these different rectangular areas, and that's pretty straightforward. At this point, it's more of just time. But let's talk real quick about how I might add in an area that includes some text like this that's laid out correctly, but has no explicit visual edge. So let's call this the networking div, because that's the text at least at one point in time. So I'm going to copy this over and call this networking. So again, position absolute. I'm going to leave background color for now because I want to show you something. And then this is going to come, say, 20 pixels to the right of the edge of this big div over here. So area 1 is 20 pixels from the left, width is 500. So that's 520 plus another 20 means that I want to be 540 from the left-hand side. Oops. Top is going to be 200 because I want these guys to align. And then width, let's make it pretty big, but we're not going to use it all. And height for this one, I'm actually just going to leave out because we're going to let the text that fills the div define its height. I'll leave it with a background color for now so we can see where it goes, but we're going to take that out in a little bit. Okay, so back here, in addition to register and area 1, we're going to have a div called networking. And then here I'll just have the word networking in all caps. Okay, so we load this guy back up. And then we have networking placed in there. So there's a couple things that make it incorrect so far. One is that the font's not big enough. Another is that it needs to be pushed down a little bit from the top. So let's go ahead and address those two things. So here, for example, I can say in my CSS that all the text that falls within the div networking, and I think it's font size, but I'll have to check. So let's say that's maybe 36 point or PT. We also want to push this a little bit further down from the top, so maybe I'll make this 250. So when I come back to here and refresh it, we get something more like that. And then finally, if I come over here and just delete the background color, now that text is just floating by itself. So it has the correct orientation, but we no longer see its explicit rectangular anchor. Right? Now we'll get into some more stuff about doing super awesome fonts beyond the default font set, but that's how you get the basics done. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about on our way to the next class is how to get this site actually functioning on Google Drive so that I can click on it like a live link. Well, now that I think about it, this is something that we should go over in class together. So here's the homework. I'd like you to get to a stage like I have on my screen right now. So we're effectively trying to reproduce some interesting layout that we found online. You don't have to reproduce it exactly, but part of the interest is that you can take what is effectively a sketch or something that you'd like to arrive at and then start to produce it over here. You should have a navigation bar that is starting to feature some live rollover techniques, and the rest of these guys can just be sort of placeholder areas where you're starting to lay in text and images. So get to that spot, and then we'll resume after Thanksgiving in class when I'll show you how to put this up live on Google Drive.